For more, we turn to Daniel McAdams, Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute. Thank you for joining us, Daniel.
Thanks, Scotty.
Okay, so Daniel, Marco Rubio, who has been a big supporter of U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, tweeted last month about how U.S. oil jobs demand that U.S. efforts to support opposition leader Juan Guaido must succeed. Does that not reveal the intent behind the pro-democracy rhetoric that we are hearing as a justification for U.S. regime change?
Well, as usual with the neocons, up is down and down is up. You know, Marco Rubio, the great humanitarian who supported all the sanctions, if Venezuelans are starving, which we don't know that that really is the case, it's at least partly because of the sanctions that Marco Rubio and his neocon colleagues and allies are in favor of. So you can't come now and act like the humanitarian when you've contributed to the problem, you've created the problem to a great extent. You know, it's really a total lie. This is what they're trying to do to get the regime change ramped up, is the lie that Maduro is blocking aid to his own people. He'd rather let his own people starve. And in fact, in the House Foreign Affairs Committee tomorrow, there'll be a hearing with Elliott Abrams, of all people, the point man for Venezuela regime change, pointing out, crying these crocodile tears over this stalled aid, which, of course, as your viewers know, was a fake story because the road that it was going on had never been open. But the point is, Elliott Abrams is the person who in the 80s was hiding weapons in aid to the Contras. This is the very person. Either we have no institutional memory or they're not even trying to hide this anymore.
Well, that's the question. You know, we talk about the new aid, we talk about Marco Rubio, we talk about all of these U.S. officials that are getting involved. What do they have to gain by pushing for a regime change in Venezuela?
Well, I think people who say it's all about oil are wrong. It's not all about oil. Oil certainly is a factor. It's about geopolitics. It's about, unfortunately, a certain type of American political thinking that the rest of the world absolutely has to fall in line with the diktats of Washington. The idea that they have to hop to it or we'll bomb them or overthrow them. And it's a very dangerous and inhumane way of looking at the world. And, you know, from Libya to Syria to Ukraine to elsewhere, there are thousands of bodies piled up under the weight of this horrible policy.
Well, that's the thing. Fewer than 20% on the ground of Venezuelans even knew who Guaido was before he came to head this opposition-controlled National Assembly. Now, Maduro supporters have said there is no constitutional basis, and yet you have people like Vice President Mike Pence and several of our European allies that are demanding Maduro resign, submit to re-elections. You know, are these not questions that we think should be answered by Venezuelans themselves and within their own country? I mean, what does this mean for national sovereignty?
Well, national sovereignty is what Washington says it is. And yes, indeed, Guaido was only 2 in 10 people have even heard of the guy. So how on earth is there any democratic legitimacy to a candidate? Not only did he not receive a single vote as president, no one's even heard of him. And Article 233 of the Venezuelan Constitution lays out 6 very specific circumstances upon which a president can lose power and the head of the assembly can gain power. None of those has objectively, by any stretch of the imagination, been met. So there's absolutely no democratic legitimacy. However, we do know that he went to a university in the U.S. notorious for CIA recruitment. We know that he and his opposition allies were trained for probably 10 years by the NED, the U.S.-funded regime change operation. And we do know that he got a phone call on the night of the 22nd from Mike Pence saying, hey, declare yourself president, why not? The next day he did it. So the U.S. fingerprints, they're all over this.
Well, it's interesting that he just got a phone call from it. I do have to wonder, when you look at why would, at this point, Maduro not submit to having an election, a re-election again? Like you said, we have no idea where Guaido stands on a lot of these issues that you would see on the campaign trail. So why would Maduro not just say, you know what, let's just hold a national election and let's be done with this?
Because if you are going to uphold the principles of democracy, the principles of one person, one vote, how is it that a mob in the street, how is it that if you've got, what, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, what's the threshold to say to all the other people who did vote, hey, your vote doesn't count? A mob in the street does not equal democracy. That is the real problem, and that is where the U.S. is absolutely hypocritical by giving any democratic legitimacy. There are groups of people in the street that can demonstrate, that's one thing, but for them to usurp the authority of the voting public is absurd.
Okay, so going forward, let's say that Maduro is able to stay in power. How is his relationship going to be once we've gone through all these processes with countries like the U.S. and others that have opposed him staying as president?
Well, they may, I mean, the neocons may end up with egg on their faces. Hopefully that's all it is, because they've done this before. This is what they do. They did the exact same thing with Gaddafi. Oh, he's killing his own people. With Maduro, he's starving his own people. These are the same slogans. The real danger, and this may come next week on February 23rd, when Guaido said that is the day that the foreign aid will come. I will bring a huge group of people and we will escort the aid over the border. It is a clear provocation. They are begging. They're begging for the Venezuelan army to fire on the people. We've seen this movie before, so really I think next week will be a real test of how far the U.S. and its puppet Guaido are willing to escalate this.
Well, it's interesting because February 15th is the deadline for the U.S., and we'll know whether or not we're going to keep our government open. And now we have February 23rd on the calendar for Venezuela. Definitely going to be a busy and sleepless nights for a lot of politicians in the U.S.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.